Well, Joe, we had ExFEARience here tonight, October 18th, 2014, and man, I'll tell you, it was the first time we recorded it. It's going to be live up on the internet, and I'll tell you, it was an awesome show.
Every single match, PK, was magic. I couldn't believe it. Everybody on their A game. And most important of all, I was there.
Yes, Joe, that was the most important of all in your own mind. Anyways, let's start with the first match. It was a tag team match. The Fallen, made up of Croatone and Scorn, versus Taco and Hot Tamale. It was the return of Taco, Joe, one of your favorite wrestlers.
You know what, PK, I'll tell you something. I can't stand that overgrown Tijuana sewer rat thinks he owns this place. Walking in here thinking he's some unsung hero, some guy who worked his way up. He belongs back in Mexico. He needs to get on this next donkey back to Mexico and swim back over the Rio Grande.
Hey, Joe, let me tell you something. I think you're just jealous because he does try to reach out to you. He does try to hug you. And in my opinion, I think Taco's a great guy. He comes to this country with nothing, becomes the ultimate champion. Now he's on his way back. He's living the American dream.
Oh, give me a break, PK.
Well, the bottom line is, unfortunately, it was not Taco and Hot Tamale's night tonight. Croatone, hit him with a stunner and a face plant and got the win.
That's right, a very decisive victory, PK.
It was.
I'll tell you something, the Fallen, those guys, the Taco Grande and whatever his name is, Hot Tamale, let me tell you something, they don't even belong in the ring. They don't belong in the O show. I hope they go back to Mexico and never come back.
Well, you know who the Fallen are going to face next, right?
Yeah, who's that?
I can't get up. Anyways, next we had a triple threat match for the Generations Championship. We had Will Caution versus Jimmy Lee versus the champion Keith Cage.
That's right, PK, and I'll tell you something, I love that match. First of all, we got a new champion, Jimmy Lee, and now that Keith Cage can go back to where he belongs, doing his social studies homework and watching Whopper Room.
Well, Joe, it was very interesting because Keith Cage went to the top rope and was going to basically do a slam on Jimmy Lee, when all of a sudden out of nowhere, Will Caution goes and knocks him down. Jimmy Lee hits him with a skull-crushing finale and gets the win and becomes the new Generations champion. And the interesting thing was, Will Caution had the biggest smile on his face. Personally, I think he was not interested at all in really winning that championship. He just wanted to ruin Keith Cage's night.
Well, of course he wasn't, because I'll tell you another thing. When Jimmy Lee was pinning Keith Cage, Will Caution, he just kept out of the ring and let it happen. He sat there smiling, and he just knew all he wanted was Keith Cage to lose. And I hope that down the road we see those two meet up.
Well, Joe, I'll tell you this, which I think we will. I don't think that's over by a long shot. Well, then we had Rod Bolt versus Hardworking Hollywood. And what's really interesting about that is Hardworking Hollywood comes out and he basically calls out Rod Bolt and shows some videos where Rod Bolt had been mistreating him, and Hardworking Hollywood was like, look, man, I brought you into the show, you had nothing, I gave you money, I gave you this and that, and this is how you repay me. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, Rod Bolt just decks him. So man, it's game on. It was a good match, but ultimately, Hardworking Hollywood goes to the top rope. He goes to come down on Rod Bolt. Rod Bolt has a handful of pennies in his hand and punches him, knocking him flat out. Luckily, the refs saw it, so Hardworking Hollywood gets the win by disqualification.
Yeah, well, you know what, dude, that's your side of the story. I just think he's trying to give Hollywood some more money. Here you go, buddy. You know what? And I'll tell you something. I feel really bad for Hardworking Hollywood, or as I say, Mr. Hollywood.
Well, Joe, if your idea of charity is taking a handful of money and punching somebody in the face, please stay away from the Goodwill and other places that need donations.
Oh, shut up.
Well, next we had Johnnie Walker versus Jack Stryker. It was really interesting because Jack Stryker gets called out by our our commissioner, Zach Daniels, and he doesn't have the belt. Remember, he pawned it. So then he shows a video showing the belt being bought at the pawn shop. So all of a sudden, Johnnie Walker's music, I almost forgot, Johnnie Walker's music come on, and he comes out. What does he have? He has the belt.
That's right. He was the one who bought it back from the pawn shop. And that's funny because of him, Jack Stryker, he didn't get fired, but yet because of him, he lost the title.
That's true. He did wind up hitting him with the haggis hanger, he calls it, for the win.
That's right, PK. I'll tell you something. We've had so many title changes tonight. It's unbelievable.
Well, then we had Goth Black come out. While he's out here talking in the ring, he's interrupted by Zach Daniels, our commissioner.
Zach Daniels, yeah, that's right. He's the commissioner. He has every right to come out there in the ring and interrupt anybody he pleases.
Why does he never interrupt you?
Because I always have something good to say, PK. I always have something worthwhile to say.
What?
Unlike you and all those other ditch diggers and chimney sweepers out there.
That's a very subjective opinion. Well, the first guy Zach Daniels sends out is a guy called I called him the Red Rider because I had no other name for him. Well, Goth made quick work of him, and then Josh Aronson came out. Now then, he gave Goth a run for his money.
He did. I was pretty surprised too, because he's not a sizable wrestler, especially going up against such a monster like Goth Black. But yeah, you're right. He gave him quite a fight.
Well, he basically tried to chop down that big tree, and unfortunately he didn't win, but I'll tell you something, he put up a great fight. He was hit by a Black Lotus slam, and Goth wound up getting the win. Well, then all of a sudden, Zach Daniels comes into the ring, and they start going at it. And that was pretty exciting to watch, but ultimately, Goth hits him with a senton and winds up getting the win. And I'll tell you something, Joe, that he ran the gauntlet, and he came out ahead.
That's right, PK. I'll tell you something. Goth Black, he's like a huge slab of concrete. Fighting him is like fighting a wall.
And Joe, I got a question for you regarding Goth Black. He's got that big head on his tattooed on his back.
Yeah, so?
Which head is bigger, that one or your own? Anyways,
will you shut up,
then we
PK?
had a fatal four-way between Ken O'Sullivan, the Archangel, Lane Cross, Adrian Phillips, and Bobby Lee. And Joe, go ahead. You want to interrupt me?
No, I was going to say that, I thought that was one of the greatest matches we had tonight. I'll tell you something, Lane Cross, I'm so impressed with that gentleman. I'll tell you something, that guy, he owns South Carolina. He owns that place, the whole wrestling scene. Now he's blitzkrieging his way down here, and he's taking charge in the OSWA. And it's about time we get some real wrestlers in here. People actually know what they're doing, like himself.
Well, Joe's real interesting, because we had Lane Cross pinned Adrian Phillips at the same time as Ken O'Sullivan pinned Bobby Lee, but Lane Cross got the victory. As a matter of fact, we got Lane Cross here right now.
I'm so glad to have Lane Cross here. Archangel.
You did right.
That's right, Archangel. I'm sorry, my brother here was confusing me earlier because he doesn't know how to read.
I ain't shaking your hand.
Well, Lane, what do you think of the victory that you had?
Well, let me put it this way. You said he pinned him at the same time I did. If you go back and watch, I'm a second ahead. If you think back, I came in the first show, I got picked to wrestle Vengeance. Yeah, it was a loss. I went 3 shows in a row with a victory. Am I right? 3
That's
shows
right.
in a row. I'm on a winning streak. For the fans out there at OSWA, there is a real wrestler in the building. There's gonna be a real wrestler in the building until somebody steps up and runs me off. And there's nobody in that locker room that's gonna do that. You see, I'm the Archangel Lane Cross. I'm not gonna lose. I'm here to stay. Y'all gonna see real wrestling.
Joe, I tell you, it is a pleasure. You know what I see in the future for you? A lot of gold around that waist of yours.
You see, I'm not even worried about the gold.
I know you're not, but you're still going to get it anyway because you're just too darn good.
Well, that'll just be a step up.
That's
but
right.
for now, let's just see if anybody can beat me.
Yeah, I doubt it. I seriously doubt it.
Thank you.
Yeah, see, he graced you. You should be lucky for that he actually shook your hand.
Well, Joe, he was a newcomer, and as well, we've also got Josh Aronson here. I'd like to give him a little time to introduce himself. He's wrestled here in the O before. He had a great match here tonight.
And tonight he took on Goth Black. And I'll tell you something, you got to respect the man just for doing that alone.
Welcome to the recap, Josh. I'll tell you something. Hey, man, you gave Goth Black a run for his money. I'm going to give it to you. Tell us a little about yourself and what your hopes are for here in the O.
You see, like Lane Cross, I am also from South Carolina, just a little ways off. Now, I came to the OSWA for one reason, and that is to be the biggest name, not only in Georgia, South Carolina, or even just the Southeast. I want to go worldwide. I'm going to make a name for myself starting here, starting tonight. I got in the ring with Goth Black. I stood toe-to-toe with a monster of a man. And I think I made my point.
I think you did too. Let me tell you something. One thing I've learned, South Carolina, the Carolinas in general, a serious hotbed for professional wrestling. And I think it's a privilege that we're getting some of those gentlemen here in Georgia, PK.
Well, Joe, I'll tell you something. They've both been great additions to our show.
Absolutely.
Well, then our next match was the tag team specialists versus the Dominion for the tag team titles.
That's right, BK. I'll tell you something. I love how that match turned out. It was a great match all around. All four of them gave it their all. And then that pretty boy, and you know who I'm talking about, Jake Hughes.
Oh.
No, Jake Hughes. He tried to cheat a victory. He tried to go in there as the illegal man, tried to use his greed, tried to use everything he could to be the main attraction. And
Sounds like somebody else I know.
shut up, PK. You're not talking about me, are you? Yeah,
Why
you better
pointing
not be. So I'll tell you something. Jake Hughes, he thought he had the victory. But he was not the right man in the ring. And I'm glad that Zach Daniels came out there.
Well, Joe, I got to agree with you. Zach Daniels made the right call. Jake Hughes was not the legal man in the ring.
That's right.
Yes, he did pin Vengeance, but Vengeance wasn't the legal man in the ring either.
That's right.
So, it was a temporary victory. Zach Daniels did the right thing, restarted the match. Z ultimately got the pin on McFly.
That's right. I'm glad the commissioner was able to come out there and fix things the way they should have been.
Well, as a matter of fact, we've got the commissioner here right now. I'd like to ask him a few questions. I know you would too.
Absolutely, PK.
Mr. Daniels?
How's it going?
Doing well, thank you.
Commissioner, always a pleasure.
Always.
Always.
So, Mr. Daniels, I was kind of thinking about the matches here tonight. Why did you make Goth Black run through two other guys before you faced him?
It's strictly business. I felt like it was the right thing to do. Goff claims to be the monster of the company. I wanted him to prove it. He prevailed. He has my satisfaction with it. It's whatever.
Well, another question I want to ask you, too, is I have to admit, I think you made the right call in the tag team specialist versus the Dominion match. And are we going to see more of that, more of the straight down the middle kind of stuff? Or what are your plans for situations like that?
I called that just like I saw it. Jake Hughes was illegal. He was not the legal man. He could not make the pinfall. So therefore, I did just what business called for me to do. I stood up, I said what was right, and I restarted the match. That is the way it should have been, that's the way it was, and that's the way it stands. They're not the champions because they didn't follow through after I restarted the match. That's their own responsibility that they have to deal with.
Now, you also at the end of the Chad Silva Alex Diamond Decker match, you advised that hey, we're going to go ahead and give the tag team specialist then another shot at the tag team titles. When do you think that's going to happen?
It happens when it happens. I'm not going to tell you it happens 2 weeks from now. I'm not going to tell you it happens a month from now. I don't know. When it happens, it happens. The Dominion, they're on notice. That's all they need to know. Tag team specialists, they're preparing. They were preparing now. They were preparing then. They're ready. It's just a matter of them stepping toe-to-toe, face-to-face with the Dominion once again and doing what they do. And that's being tag team specialists.
Okay. Well, Mr. Daniels, it's a pleasure having you again on the recap.
Absolutely. Good calls tonight.
Have a good one, gentlemen.
Well, Joe, then we had our final match. It was Chad Silva versus Alex Diamond Decker for the Ultimate Championship in a Keys of the Kingdom match. I'll tell you something, it's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Me personally, I've been watching wrestling for years and years and years. I'd never seen any match like that before. And it was an incredible match,
Oh,
BK.
it was. They basically put a key on each corner of the ring, and then you had the wrestler had to climb up there and unlock the box that the championship belt was in and then take the belt out. I mean, Joe, it was an awesome match.
That's right. Those 4 keys, only one key was the correct key. And they had to find out which one that was.
Well, Silva wound up getting that final key, and he goes and he unlocks it, and when he opens it, all of a sudden he gets, Alex Diamond Decker decides he's going to try to take a shot of it. Gets Silva out of the way. He then goes to grab it. Silva comes in with a Superman punch, winds up getting the belt and getting the victory. And once again, Chad Silva, after all he's been through, to come out victorious. Man, what a great journey for him.
BK, I got to tell you know what? I can't wait for Alex Diamond Decker to face him again, though. Because, I think it was a fluke tonight. Because, maybe he got lucky. Maybe he was the better man tonight. But you know that in general, Alex Diamond Decker is the better wrestler, and I can't wait for him to reclaim that gold.
Well, Joe, I can't help but disagree with you, but I'll tell you something, I guess we'll see in the future. He does get a rematch clause, and we'll see what happens. Folks, our next show is going to be November 1st, 2014. I look forward to being there. I know Joe does too.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you something, I got one more thing I want to say. Today, we celebrated my daughter's birthday. I want to say happy birthday to my daughter, Clarissa. Joe, what would you like to say to your niece?
Yeah, okay. You're turning 9, halfway to adulthood. Congratulations.
Wow, so heartfelt.
Thank
Single
you.
tear rolls down the side of my cheek.
I'm a
Folks,
very
we'll see you at the next recap and at the next show.